The History of Shaman Totems, Book 3, Fire. The fire totems were the only way to actually do damage with your totems. The other ones just kind of gave buffs. Before Mist, you had to do a quest to get the Fire Master Totem at level 10, and like all other totems, you had to go on an annoyingly long quest to get it. The one for fire totems wasn't as bad though as the Water Totem quest, which was probably one of the worst class quests in the game considering how you had to go all over the world to complete it. Now onto the totems themselves. First up we have Fire Nova Totem. Before patch 3.3, Fire Nova was a totem with a very interesting effect. Fire Nova Totem only lasted 5 seconds, and what it would do is wait 4 seconds before it would do damage. And it would do all of its damage in one large burst, so it was kind of like setting down a time bomb. But the totem only had 5 health and would draw aggro from everything around it, and it would rarely live, until patch 3.08. In patch 3.02, there was a talent that would also make the totem stun for 2 seconds when it did its damage. Then in patch 3.3, it was removed and replaced with Fire Nova, that spell that makes your targets with Flame Shock do AoE damage. Searing Totem would just target a random enemy within 20 yards and attack it until it decided to stop. Other than its duration changing like all totems, it stayed pretty much the same. There was a time when enhanced shamans had a talent where the totem would put a dot on the target that was also needed on their target to do competitive DPS. And because of this, for a while, Searing Totem would prefer to target a mob with either Flame Shock or StormStrike on it. But they removed that talent and it went back to just targeting random mobs again. Flametongue Totem in its first form was a group-wide buff to weapons that caused them to do extra fire damage every hit. Then in patch 3.02 it was changed to provide extra spell power instead. But there was already another totem that Ellie Shamans had called Totem of Wrath that gave more spell power, so this one was kind of a weaker version available to all shamans. Flametongue Totem was removed in Cataclysm with all other buff totems. Totem of Wrath was added in BC as the last tier Ellie talent that gave spell power and 3% crit. Then in patch 4.01 it was removed and replaced with a talent that let all fire totems give the 10% spell power buff. Then the buff was later changed as a class baseline buff in Mist when they removed all buff totems. Frost Resistance Totem gave Frost Resistance. In patch 4.01 it was removed and replaced with Elemental Resistance Totem. Magma Totem in its first form was an AoE totem that would pulse damage every 2 seconds for whatever duration it lasted in its time. Today, Magma Totem is an AoE totem that pulses every 2 seconds for AoE damage to all targets in 8 yards, so it hasn't really changed much. Its most useful application though is for protecting a flag in raided battlegrounds. Fire Elemental Totem added in BC is the more useful element out of the two. At first, it had a 20-minute cooldown and would cause a short, shared cooldown with the Earth Elemental Totem. Then in patch 4.06, that cooldown was removed and both could be dropped at once. The Fire Elemental himself has 3 abilities: a Fire Nova that does AoE damage, Fire Blast, which does mediocre ranged fire damage, and Fire Shield, which does a small amount of AoE damage to targets close or that hit it. Its biggest selling point though is that its melee damage is all fire damage, which means it bypasses armor, and the Earth Elemental Totem hits with physical damage. In Tier 12 during Firelands, Ellie Shamans had a 2-set bonus that gave their Lightning Bolt a small chance to reset the cooldown of the Fire Elemental Totem, which at the time was 10 minutes. With this 2-set bonus, you could have your Fire Elemental out almost 100% of the time, and this made any Ellie Shaman with half a brain be able to pull competitive DPS. Even if your name was Philps and you stole from the guild bank and used every opportunity possible to try and screw me over for seemingly no reason and adding my banker to your friends list so you can undercut my auctions the moment I posted them, because I banned you from the guild bank because you kept stealing from it. That's right, Philps, the only reason you were number 1 in Firelands was because that 2-set bonus was broken to shit and you were always last on DPS charts back in Tier 11. So no, it's not because you were good, it's because of that 2-set bonus. There's also a talent Shamans can take at level 90 that will transform your Fire Elemental Totem into a Primal Fire Elemental Totem. That can give it 2 new abilities along with its old ones: Immolate, which is just a fire-based dot, and Empower, a channeled spell that reduces damage by 5% and increases healing of the Shaman by 10%. And that's it for the Fire Totems. Up next will be the Air Totems, and there are a lot of Air Totems. So if you remember anything interesting about any of the Air Totems, leave it in a comment and I might add it to the next video.